Right, so we start off with the next chapter, chapter 2, from hunting gathering to growing food. Okay, let's just go through it, why not? Tusha's train journey. Tusha was going from Delhi to Chennai for his cousin's wedding. They were traveled by train and managed to squeeze into the window seat, his nose glued to the glass pane as he watched trees and houses fly past. His uncle tapped his shoulder and said, "Do you know that trains were first used about 150 years ago?" Hey, that's a good information. That's good. Oh god. I don't know, some technical difficulties. Wait 1 second. We use this, we get rid of that. Okay, so what seems to be the problem here? It seems, wait. Is it? God, I don't know. Anyway, okay, so 150 years ago we had trains. 150 years ago, okay, and that people began using buses a few decades later. Tusha wondered, when people couldn't travel quickly from one place to another, did they spend their entire lives wherever they were born? Not quite. So that's how the chapter begins. The earliest people, why were they on the move? We know about people who lived in the subcontinent as early as 2 million years ago. Today we describe them as hunter gatherers. The name comes from the way in which they got their food. Generally, they hunted wild animals, caught fish, gathered fruits, roots, leaves, stalks, and eggs. Okay. Hunter gatherers moved from place to place. That's the thing. They moved from place to place. There are many reasons for this. First, if they had stayed at one place for a long time, they would have eaten up all the available plant and animal resources. So that's the very first reason. So if they stayed in one place, it's quite obvious that they would have consumed all of it. They would have eaten up everything that was available. Okay, therefore they would have to go elsewhere in search of food. So that was one reason why they had to move. The second reason was like animals moved from place to place, and it's the same for those who hunted, for those who were the predators, and also for the prey. Predators because they were in search of grasses and leaves, while the prey, the smaller prey because they were in search of the grasses and leaves, and the predators because the prey was moving. So they would all move together, kind of a thing, right? The third reason is because plants and trees bear fruit in different seasons. So season was another reason why they had to keep on moving. Why? Because they would bear fruits. Plants and trees would bear fruits in different seasons. So they had to keep moving. So people may have moved from season to season in search of different kinds of, in search of different kind of plants. Fourthly, people, plants, and animals need water. Water is another reason why people would have moved. Why? Because there are some rivers, lakes, and all which are perennial. Perennial, they have defined it here as waters which would last throughout the year, whereas others were only seasonal. The other water sources that existed were seasonal. So some of them were water sources like rivers and lakes, which were permanent throughout the year. Those were perennial water sources, and there were others which were seasonal. So people living on their bank would have had to go in search of water during the dry seasons. So when the summers would kick in, or when winters would, like whenever there's a lack of rainfall, so whenever there's like winters and summers at its peak, there would be a dry season going on. So it would be obvious for people to shift to places where they can find water. So that would have been another reason why people would have moved. So there are four reasons that have been described. The very first reason is because if they'd stayed in one place, then they would have eaten up everything that was available. Second reason why, because animals kept on moving from one place to another place. The predator would move because the prey would move because the grass and leaves would exhaust from one place to another place, right? I had to follow their movements. Yeah, in search of grass and leaves. And thirdly, because the seasons, plants and trees would bear fruits in different seasons, so in search of different kinds of plants, the people would have to move from time to time. And fourthly, because of water. Okay, let's go through it once again. First, if they had stayed in one place, they would have eaten up everything. Second, predators and prey would move, animals would move. Third, because fruits, different kind of fruits. And fourth, because water. How do we know about these people? Archaeologists have found some of the things hunter-gatherers made and used. So yeah, hunter-gatherers are those people who we described as those who would they're the oldest kinds of people who would move from place to place, who would collect stuff like these. And so archaeologists have found some of the things which hunter-gatherers made and used. It is likely that people made and used tools of stone. This is a thing of importance. Tools of stone, wood and bone, of which stone tools have survived best. Some of these stone, okay, so they used to make tools of stone and also tools of wood and bone, but stone tools would obviously survive better. Why? Because obviously it's stone and the other is wood and bone. Well, I'd expect the bone ones and wood ones if they're charred, but anyway, stone tools are more obvious. Some of these stone tools were used to cut meat and bone, scrap bark from trees, and hides, chop fruit and roots. There's various purposes to chop stuff, to cut things off, or scrap, okay? To cut, scrap, or chop. Some may have been attached to handles or of bone or wood to make spears and arrows for hunting. So spears and arrows could also be made out of it. Other tools were used to chop wood, which was used as firewood. Wood was also used to make huts and tools. Look at this. What is it about? Stone tools may also have been used for the left one, that is this one. Digging the ground to collect edible root. So roots here. So they're digging the ground to get these stuff under it. And what about this? Right, is stitching clothes made out of animal skins. So yeah, so this is the animal skin, and tools could be used to stitch clothes made out of animal skin. That's good. Choosing a place to live in. Look at map 2 below. All the places marked with red triangles are sites from which archaeologists have found evidence of hunter-gatherers. Ooh, that's interesting. Let's take a look at this. The red ones are those areas from where archaeologists have found hunter-gatherer sites. Now look at this. Bhimbetka is one of them. This is one important site. The other one is Hansji. And another one is Karnool Caves. Now that I've said this, I've been to these caves. Really huge, you know. I've been here, it's good. I mean, if you haven't visited, it's a good place to go. There's a lot of this is really interesting caves, these Karnool caves. Okay, so what do they have here though? They have the evidence of hunter-gatherers. Hunter-gatherers lived in many more places. Only some are shown on the map. Right, okay, so these are the important ones only, and the others are also there, but we'll look into that later. Many sites were located near sources of water such as rivers and lakes. I was wondering, Bhimbetka, It's near the Narmada river. See? And now when you talk about it, you remember where Narmada river was, right? When we did it in the last chapter. We said it's right at the center, near the Vindhya mountain ranges. It was somewhere here, I guess. Vindhya was somewhere here, no? Somewhere here. I don't exactly remember it, but I'm pretty sure it was somewhere here. It was near the center. That was where Vindhya was. And south to this was the place where rice was grown. Yeah, now that I've come to remember stuff. Anyway, I usually do not have really good memory and all, but I think I'm doing well. So Bhimbetka is near Narmada river. Let's take a look at the Karnool caves. Karnool caves is near the Krishna river, or maybe it's a tributary, and the same goes for Hansji also. So Krishna river is the ones providing the water resource for um, ancient hunter gatherers down during those periods in Hansji and Karnool caves. So Narmada river for Bhimbetka and Krishna river for Hansji and Karnool caves. I don't know how they would ask a question out of these, but I'm pretty sure the information is pretty useful. It could be used in a different way. Okay. So many sites were located near sources of water. Okay. There's another interesting fact here. Bhimbetka in present day Madhya Pradesh. Okay, Bhimbetka is in Madhya Pradesh. That's also another good. In the present day, it is in Madhya Pradesh. God, it's very hard to write with a mouse. Anyway, Bhimbetka. This is an old site with caves and rock shelters. People chose these natural caves because they provided shelter from the rain, heat, and wind. So, shelter from rain, heat, and wind is what these caves provided the people with. These rock shelters are close to Narmada Valley. Narmada Valley. So, there is like a Narmada Valley also here in Madhya Pradesh. Bhimbetka, Narmada Valley. Oh, I can't forget this. Then what about Vindhya? Vindhya is a question. I really have no clue. But I guess these valleys are all close by. I mean, I think Narmada River close to those are Narmada valleys, of course, and Vindhyas are more towards the center. So Bhimbetka lies somewhere close to all of these things. Okay. Move on. As stone tools were important, people tried to find places where good quality stone was easily available. People tried to find places where good quality stone was easily available. Yep. Obviously, anyone would want to have really razor sharp stones. Yeah, to make things easier for themselves and all. True. Rock paintings and what they tell us. A painting from a rock shelter. Describe the painting. Yeah, they've asked us to do that. I mean, it's pretty obvious. The guy is just gonna murder this poor deer. But I guess the guy is also poor because he's hungry. So he butchers the deer probably and eats it to survive. Basically, it's just a description of a picture showing hunting as a activity which the older people used to do. in the simplest of terms. Anyway, let's move on. Many of the caves in which these early people lived have paintings on the walls. Some of the best examples are from Madhya Pradesh and from southern Uttar Pradesh. This is good. So you find examples of paintings on the wall in two places mainly. One is in Madhya Pradesh, the other is in the southern parts of Uttar Pradesh. Okay, so these paintings show wild animals drawn with great accuracy and skill. So probably this picture they might have taken this from one of the caves in Madhya Pradesh or from southern Uttar Pradesh. Although it doesn't look really that accurate, let's not delve into it anyway. I deviate a lot, I should take care of it. Okay, sites. These are the places where the remains of things like tools, pots, buildings, etc. were found. These were made, used, and left behind by people. These may be found on the surface of the earth, buried under the earth, or sometimes even underwater. So you can find it in pretty much any place where we have no clue about. That's what this particular part is trying to tell us. Finding out about fire. So they've asked us to find the Kurnool caves on map 2, which we did. Traces of ash have been found here. So that is the important finding. We found ash here in the Kurnool caves. Let's mark it out on the map, shall we? We write ash. God. So we found ash in the Kurnool caves. Okay. Right. This suggests that people were familiar with the use of fire. That's important. So in Kurnool caves, hunter-gatherers were pretty much aware of fire, how to use fire. Fire could have been used for many things, as a source of light, to roast meat, and to scare away animals. Names and dates. What do we use fire for today? Think about it, okay. So names and dates. Archaeologists have given lengthy names for the time that we are studying. They called the earliest period the Paleolithic. So there are three different names that we must be aware of. One is Paleolithic, the other is the Mesolithic, and the third one is Neolithic. So paleo, as we can all imagine, it means the word paleo means old, and lithos means rocks or stones. Lithosphere and all. So rock or stone is what lithos means. And similarly, if you were to compare and study these things, then you would say Meso means middle stone, or middle stone era, or something like that. And Neolithic they had asked us to think what the term Neolithic means. So neo is new, okay, so lithic and lithic is stone, so new stones or something of that sort, right? So these are Greek words. Paleolithic, Mesolithic, and Neolithic are derived from Greek words. Paleo means old, okay, so these are Greek words. The name points to the importance of finds of stone tools. The Paleolithic period extends from 2 million years ago to 12,000 years ago. So the age, the gap, the period is huge. This is a huge period from 2 million years ago to everything as old as just around 12,000 years ago. That whole gap comes under the period of Paleolithic. So 2 million to 12,000 years ago is what we have, is what we call Paleolithic, okay. So this long stretch of the time is divided into the lower, okay, so this is further divided into three parts, okay. So we have the lower, we have the middle, and we have the upper Paleolithic times. Okay, so we have lower, middle, and upper Paleolithic eras. So this long span of time covers 99% of human history. That's another important aspect. So when you have a time period this long, we can practically understand that how much of a development it is that we people have come up to. I mean, take some time out and think about it. I mean, it's remarkable how we have suddenly grown from nothing to such an advanced species. I mean, if you've never thought about it, you should actually take some time to pause and wonder about this great thing. I mean, think about it. 99% of the human history comes under the Paleolithic era, and it is like 2 million years ago to about 12,000 years ago. And all we knew at that particular period of time was stones, hunting, gathering, food, and basic things. I mean, communication was also another big challenge, I guess, at that particular point of time. Traveling was a big issue. Everything was so unpredictable. At I mean, and from that period of time to today, which is covered in this Neolithic times, from about 10,000 years ago to this present date, and all of these events that have been recorded since the king's times and all, since this concept of kings and things like that was in prime. From that particular point of time, since we had kept records of things happening, or history, as we know it started happening, the amount of discoveries that we have made, all of that comes under this Neolithic period, and that is excluding the Mesolithic period, which both of them together does not even cover like 1% of the 100% of whatever human history we had. It's a remarkable thing. Anyway, moving on. The period when we find environmental changes beginning about 12,000 years ago till about 10,000 years ago is called Mesolithic. So from 12,000 years ago till about 10,000 years ago, there were environmental changes, there were climate changes mostly. We'll read about that in the upcoming session. So stone tools found during this period are generally tiny and are called microliths. So the difference here between the Paleolithic times and the Mesolithic time is that the stone tools that were found at this particular period of time here in Mesolithic era, they were small, they were tiny, and therefore they are called microliths. So M&M, Mesolithic, microliths. Okay. So microliths were probably stuck onto the handles of bones of wood to make tools such as saws and sickles. So saws and sickles could be things that was found during the Mesolithic times. At the same time, older varieties of tools continued to be in use. So tools of the older versions would also be in use during this time. Okay. So the next stage, from about 10,000 years ago, is known as the Neolithic. So they've asked us what it means. We've tried to understand what it is. We have also mentioned the names of some places. You'll find the names of many more places in the later chapters. Very often we use present day names of the places where people lived in the past because we do not know what they called them. Okay, not really that important. A changing environment. So this is what they've been talking about, the change of environment during the Mesolithic times. So around 12,000 years ago, there were major changes in the climate of the world with a shift to, this is important, to a relatively warmer condition. So from colder to warmer conditions is what had happened during the 12,000 years ago kind of a period. We had a shift from the colder environments to a relatively warm condition. So in many areas, because of this, there was an increment or development of grasslands. This is another crucial event. What happened is it led to an increase in the number of deer, antelope, goat, sheep, and cattle, that is, animals that survived on grass. It increased the number of the species that depended on grass for food. So those who hunted these animals now followed them, learning about their food habits and their breeding seasons. It is likely that this helped people to start thinking about herding and rearing these animals themselves. Fishing also became important. So fishing also became important when the climate was more moving towards the warmer conditions. So I'd put that somewhere around 11,000 years ago to around 10,000. The bridge between the Mesolithic times and the Neolithic times would probably when fishing came into existence, is what I am presuming. I can be wrong. Okay, the beginning of farming and herding. This was also a time when several grain bearing grasses, including wheat, barley, and rice, grew naturally in different parts of the subcontinent. So, with the changing, like with increase in grasslands and all coming up, grain bearing grasses would also come into existence or would increase tremendously in its number. So, wheat, barley, and rice began to come up quickly. So men, women, and children probably collected these grains as food and learned where they grew and when they ripened. This may have led them to think about growing plants on their own. So in this way, people became farmers. So how did people become farmers? Shift in the climatic conditions around 12,000 years ago. People finding out how to take care of the farms or grow these grains and take care of it. So naturally over a period of time people became farmers. That's how the book kind of summarizes on how farmers came into being. People could also attract and then tame animals. Taming animals is another important thing that happened by leaving food for them near their shelters. Okay, and they've also found that the first animal to be tamed was the wild ancestor of the dog. So the wild ancestors of the dog used to be the very first animals that was tamed. And later, people encouraged animals that were relatively gentle to come near the camps where they lived. So these animals would be sheep, goat, cattle, and also pig. Okay, so often people protected these animals from attacks by other wild animals, and so this is how they became herders. So taming of, so that's how the book explains farming and herding, or farmers and herders and how they came into existence. So taming of these animals um, uh, is how they became herders. Okay, they began, the earliest known was dog, and then they had sheep, goat, and cattle and pigs living with them. That's how the book explains it. Okay, can you think of any reasons why the dog was perhaps the first animal to be tamed? uh, why do you think so? I think it's because of their temperament, but of course there could be other reasons. Anyway, it's not really that important for us to think, but it's just a brain snack kind of a thing. Not even a brain snack, it's just a thought provoking thing. Okay, next, domestication. That is a name given to the process in which people grow plants and look after animals. Very often, plants and animals that are tended by people become different from wild plants and animals. This is because people select plants and animals for domestication. For example, they select those plants and animals that are not prone to disease. They also select plants that yield large size grain and have strong stalks capable of bearing the weight of the ripe grains. So there are certain things which people actually look for when they want to domesticate something. They want something which is not prone to disease. They want something which will bear large size grains, and they want something which has a very strong stalk, which can hold the ripe grains. Seeds from selected plants are preserved and sown to ensure that new plants will have a higher quality or will have the same qualities or the selected favorable qualities. Amongst animals, those that are relatively gentle. Now, at that particular point of time, if you were to have dogs which were more wild and were more their ancestor like, they wouldn't be gentle. So you needed traits of those animals that were gentle, or those characters in particular dogs which were recessive. The wildness, the domestic character should be more, and they were selectively breeded, due to which gradually domesticated animals and plants became different from wild animals and plants. For example, the teeth and horns of wild animals are usually much larger than those of domesticated animals. Look at this photo. I mean, this is one of the best examples that can be there. This is definitely a wild animal, and this is a domestic version of the same wild animal. You see the difference? So this is what this is what selective breeding does. It kind of favors those particular traits that are useful for man, um, when we want to domesticate things. Okay, so domestication was a gradual process that took place in many parts of the world. It began about 12,000 years ago. Okay, so this happened 12,000 years ago. Virtually all the plant and animal produce that we use as food today is a result of domestication. Some of the earliest plants to be domesticated were wheat and barley. The earliest domesticated animals include sheep and goat. Do you remember something about this wheat and barley thing? In the last lecture, we discussed where these things used to grow, and strikingly, this thing also somewhere fits around this timeline. We talked about wheat and barley near the Kirthar and the Suleiman Hills, and we said that the people used to grow wheat and barley 8,000 years ago. So that's a good logical fit here in the Suleiman and Kirthar Hills. 8,000 years ago, wheat and barley. Right. A new way of life. If you plant a seed, you will notice that it takes some time to grow. This may be for several days, weeks, months, and in some cases, years. When people began growing plants, it meant that they had to stay. Okay, they had to stay in the same place for a long time, looking after the plants, watering, weeding, driving away animals and birds till the grain ripened, and then the grain had to be used carefully. So this is another good thing. I mean, they used the grains as seed. They used it as food. They also used it as gifts. This was surprising, and they of course stored it for food and all. I mean, we still do it. So they used to use it as gifts. That's good. As grain had to be stored for both food and seed, people had to think of ways of storing it. In many areas, they began making large clay pots or wove baskets or dug pits. So they started making these clay pots, baskets, and some even made storage areas in the form of pits underground. Do you think hunter-gatherers would have made and used pots? I don't believe it. I don't think hunter-gatherers used to do that because they used to keep moving from one place to another place and they didn't have time to stay in one place and look after farms and all of those things. I mean, hunter-gatherers used to exist way before 12,000 years ago. So my answer is more towards no, but I could be wrong. I could be wrong. It's not that I know. I'm making my reasonings out of what I learned from this book. I can definitely be wrong. Anyway, but my best for bet would be that they didn't know. They didn't know how to make pots and stuff like that because they used to keep moving from one place. They depended on fruits and roots and stuff like that, which they would find in the natural environment, and also hunting. Right. Storing animals. Animals multiply naturally. Besides, if they are looked after carefully, they provide milk, which is an important source of food and meat whenever required. In other words, animals that are reared can be used as store of food. Okay, so they can be used as a storage, store of food for like milk and meat whenever it is required. So apart from food, what are the other things that could have been obtained from animals? What are animals used for today? These are things which we can think about in our pastime. Anyway, um, finding out about the first farmers and herders. Turn to map 2. You will notice a number of blue squares. Each marks a site from where archaeologists have found evidence of early farmers and herders. So we are looking for early farmers and herders in the blue ones. So those would be the Neolithic or the Mesolithic periods, I guess. Neolithics is what I think they would be. Yep, they are the Neolithic sites. So let's look at the blue ones. We have one here. It's called Payampalli. Somewhere in between Tamil Nadu and Kerala, near the Kaveri River. Oh, and this is definitely somewhere close to Bangalore. Halur. And I don't see a river anywhere here. Anyway, I can be wrong. Let's look at another one. We have Chirand. And we have the Ganga River here, somewhere here. We have Koldeva and Mahagad. These are also like tributaries of the Ganga Yamuna rivers. And we have this Daujali Hadding. I can't really see any river close by, but the best bet would be the Brahmaputra here. And we have one here, Barza Home. And we have the river Indus, separating into different tributaries of it. I don't exactly remember the names of these rivers. Bays was here, somewhere here. Chenab, Jhelum, I guess. And one would go into Kabul. Yeah. Okay. I guess we'll have to look into that once again. Remember these tributaries. These are important tributaries of the Indus River. It needs to be memorized. It needs to be memorized. Anyway, let's move on. Move on. We don't want this video to go really that long. Uploading is a mess, really, when we have a longer video. Anyway, but we should not miss any important details. That is also important. So these are found all over the subcontinent. Some of the most important ones are in the northwestern region, and some of important ones are in the northwest, which is in the present day Kashmir, and in the east and south India. So we have in northwest, and we have in the east, and also in the southern regions of India, which makes sense. Why? Because we dealt with the northwest would be this was a home. Oh, we also had one more, Mehergarh. So these are in the northwestern region, and eastern region is these, I guess. Yep. And we have southern region. We also have somewhere, like if you were to extend this, then you could say that all of this part is like eastern. So we have northwest, we have eastern regions, and we have the southern regions where we have the Neolithic sites. Okay. To find out whether these sites were settlements of farmers and herders, scientists study evidence of plants and animal bones. One of the most exciting finds includes remains of burnt grains. So this is remains of burnt grains is one way how farmers and herders how scientists could study or find sites which were settlements of farmers and herders. So some of these burned grains could be because of an accident, or it could also be because on purpose, shifting cultivation and all. It's a possibility. Scientists can identify these grains, and so we know that a number of crops were grown in different parts of the subcontinent. They can also identify the bones of different animals. That's what these people are meant to do, right? Anyway, archaeologists, scientists. Anyway, towards a settled life, archaeologists have found traces of huts or houses at at some sites. For instance, in Burza home in present-day Kashmir, the one we saw in the northwestern part. This one here is his Burza home. So, what did they find there? People built pit houses. So, in that region, people used to build pit houses which were dug into the ground. Those were underground with steps leading into them. These may have provided shelter in cold weather. So during the cold weathers in Jammu and in the Kashmir or wait Jammu and Kashmir region, there used to be pit houses which would be underground, and they would protect the people from the cold weather. So archaeologists have also found cooking huts both inside and outside the huts, which suggests that depending on the weather, people could cook food either indoors or outdoors. Now they've asked us to draw a pit house. They didn't show one here, and okay. Stone tools have been found from many sites as well. Many of these are different from the earlier Paleolithic tools, and that is why they are called Neolithic. So they're different from Paleolithic tools, and that's the reason why they're called Neolithic. Don't write that. Neolithic means definitely because newer forms of tools. They are different from the Mesolithic type tools, and also they are different from the Paleolithic ones. Mesolithics are microliths. Tools are micro. They're smaller in size and all. Okay, these include tools that were okay. So Neoliths included tools. Neoliths would include tools that are polished to give a fine cutting edge. So that's the difference here. And there were also tools like mortars and pestles, which was used for grinding grains and other plant produce. So mortars and pestles are used for grinding grains even today, several thousand years later. At the same time, tools of the Paleolithic types continued to be made and used, and remember, some tools were also made of bone. Okay, so a fine cutting edge because of the polished surface, and mortars and pestles that were used for grinding grain and other plant produce all came into being during the Neolithic period of time or era. So many kinds of earthen pots have also been found. So earthen pots were also found during the Neolithic times. These were sometimes decorated and were used for storing things. So decorated ones are also an important aspect somewhere during the Neolithic period. People began using pots for cooking food, especially grains like rice, wheat, and lentils, that now became an important part of the diet. Besides, they began weaving clothes. Weaving of clothes is also important during the Neolithic period, using different kinds of material, for example, cotton, that could now be grown. Did things change everywhere and all at once? Not quite. In many areas, men and women still continued to hunt and gather food, and elsewhere, people adopted farming and herding slowly over several thousands of years. Besides, in some cases, people tried to combine these activities doing different things during different seasons. A closer look. Living and dying in Mehergarh. Okay, wait. Before, let's admire this beauty though. Look at this jar. I mean, it's so old, but still in one piece, well protected. Anyway, let's move on. Living and dying in Mehergarh. So there was to find Mehergarh again, northwestern side. This is Mehergarh here, right here. This is Mehergarh. We have to clean things up a little bit, right? Mehergarh right here. Okay. Also, if anyone is a student or something, in school, please don't make your book the way I've done it here. I mean, it's not how it's supposed to look like. It should look clean. You should just, be creative. Don't destroy the book. Let it look good. Get an ebook like this and go crazy. Okay. So, Mehergarh. This site is located in a fertile plain near the Bolan Pass. And Bolan Pass is the most important route into Iran. So Mehergarh was probably one of the places where people learned to grow barley and wheat and rear sheep and goats for the first time in this area. So barley and wheat and rearing of sheep and goats. As far as barley and wheat is concerned, there's only one thing that goes into my mind, and that's first chapter. And the first chapter we talked about Kirthar and Suleiman Hills. It is striking. Like if you look into the map here, you'd find that Mehergarh is somewhere here in Pakistan. Kirthar and Suleiman Hills were also somewhere here. And these hills were those places where they used to have wheat and barley around 8,000 years back. So it all connects. Mehergarh is a Neolithic site, okay, where and close to this Indus river flowing here, it all connects. Okay, so remember, 8,000 years ago, Kirthar Suleiman Hills, Mehergarh settlement there. Okay, wheat and barley, the first crops to be grown. And there was another one, agriculture in the Garo Hills in the eastern side. Okay, from the first chapter. Anyway, let's not go too much into it. First time in this area. Okay, so along with barley and wheat, there was also rearing of sheep and goats for the first time in the Mehergarh region or regions near the Suleiman and the Kirthar hills for the first time. It is one of the earliest villages that we know about. At this site, many animal bones were found. Bones of wild animals such as the deer and the pig, and also bones of sheep and goat were found. Other finds at Mehergarh includes remains of square or rectangular houses This is also another great find by the archaeologists. You really need to look into the picture to the left here, and they've even asked us to go through it. I mean, a house in Mehergarh. This is what a house in Mehergarh may have looked like. It. In what ways is this house similar to the one in which you live? Interesting, isn't it? I mean, they have separated rooms, separate rooms for different purposes, I guess. And they even make this claim that they used some of these rooms for the storage of food. So each house had 4 or more compartments, some of which may have been used for storage. See, so when people die, their relatives and friends generally pay respect to them. People look after them, perhaps in the belief that there is some form of life after death. Burial is one such arrangement. So people used to be crazy. I mean, they used to believe the fact that I don't know if it's crazy. Okay, it's subjective, depending on what people's beliefs are. Some people would agree to the fact that there exists an afterlife. I think I should go. I think I should start another channel where I talk about things that is totally not related to studies, and I can totally deviate from whatever I'm doing and just talk. It would be interesting anyway, but that's not the purpose of this video anyway. Okay, so perhaps in the belief that there is some form of life after death. Burial is one such arrangement. Several burial sites have been found at Mehergarh. In one instance, the dead person was buried with goats. Now, this is crazy. A dead person was buried with goats, which were probably meant to serve as food in the next world. Right, bonkers. This is a fun thing if you people are interested. I mean, why not? This one is definitely a human being. This is definitely a human being. So the rest of whatever is here is probably goats. These are all goats. And I can already see, like, this is one head, this is the second head, there's like is 3, 4, 5. I think there are like 5 goats with him. Interesting. Okay, elsewhere, cave paintings in France. So there used to be cave paintings in other parts of the world as well. France is one such place where there was cave paintings. So they've asked us to find France in our atlas. And then the painting below is from a cave in France. The site was discovered by 4 school children more than 100 years ago. Paintings like this were made between 20,000 and 10,000 years ago. And many of these were of animals such as wild horses, aurochs, and older wild form of cattle. How do you pronounce this? Aurochs, aurochs, something. Okay, but it's an auroch is an. I'll go with auroch. Auroch is an older wild form of cattle. Auroch. And bison, woolly rhinoceros. I don't know what that means. I mean, this would be interesting, and if you people are interested, why don't you search for woolly rhinoceros and aurochs, just to see how they look like. Could be interesting, probably. Reindeer and bear painted in bright colors. Okay, so these colors were made from. Okay, this is important. Now, these colors, which was used for wall painting and all, they were used from minerals like ochre, okay, or iron ore, ochre or iron ore, and charcoal. So this was what was being used, So it is possible that these paintings were done on ceremonial occasions. So for special occasions, they would make certain pictures like these. Or perhaps they were made for special rituals performed by hunters before they went in search of prey. Can you think of any other reason? And then they've given us this picture. I really do not understand. Okay, they've given us this picture, right? Okay. Elsewhere, a Neolithic site, I would want you people to imagine whatever the hell is going on. Elsewhere, a Neolithic site, find Turkey in your atlas. Okay, so one of the most famous Neolithic sites, Cattle Hayuk, Katal Hayuk, Cattle Hayuk, however it is pronounced, was found in Turkey. So several things were brought from great distances. Now this is also another important thing. Flint was brought from Syria. Cowries were from the Red Sea. Shells were from the Mediterranean Sea and used in the settlement. Remember, there were no carts, so whatever was brought, it was brought on the backs of pack animals such as cattle or by people. So cattle or people were mostly responsible for the carrying of stuffs from such long distances. Okay, so these were the things that were brought during those period of time. Flint came from Syria. Flint from Syria. Cowries from the Red Sea. Cowries from Red Sea. Shells from Mediterranean Sea. Shells from the Mediterranean Sea. So three things: flint from Syria, cowries from Red Sea, and shells from the Mediterranean Sea. Okay. What was special about Turkey? It was Cattle Hayuk, a Neolithic site. So that was it about the second chapter. Let's go through a quick revision in within like 3 minutes, so that we finish it off in like an hour. Okay, let's go. Tushar, here one thing important was the 150-year ago fact about trains. Then we discussed about hunter-gatherers. Like they were the older people who didn't have any kind of knowledge about staying in one particular place, growing food and all. They used to move from one place to another place because of different region for reasons. First, because the fruits and things, if they stayed in one place, would get consumed. Second, because animals kept on moving, because of search of grass and leaves, the predators would also move because of the prey. Third, because plants and trees would produce fruits in different seasons. Fourth, because of water. And then we move towards tools of stones. They could be used for different purposes: cutting meat, chopping of stuff, and also to create spears and arrows. Then we saw this picture where one person could use it for the digging and finding of roots like this, and for stitching of clothes in this picture here. And then we moved to this particular area where we discussed about the older ones, Paleolithic sites. We talked about Karnool caves, we talked about Bhimbetka, and we talked about Hansji. We also talked where it located. One was in Narmada River, near Narmada River or Narmada Valley. The other was near the tributaries and the main river of Krishna, both Karnool and Hansji in Krishna, and Narmada River in Bhimbetka. Okay, so we move further. We looked into these aspects. Narmada Valley is another one we saw. We found that Bhimbetka was in the present day Madhya Pradesh, and people would stay there because of the shelter and protection from the rain, heat, and wind and all. Okay? And then we talked about the cave paintings that could be seen in caves like the ones that we talked about. And then we talked about facts that cave paintings could be seen in Madhya Pradesh and southern Uttar Pradesh. Then we came down to talk about the finding of fire, like the ash was first in the Karnool caves. And we talked about places where remains yeah, sites. They just talked briefly of what site means. And then we talked about three different timelines. One was the Paleolithic time, the Mesolithic time, and the Neolithic time. Paleolithic time accounts for 99% of the human history. We took some time out to find out like how great that thing actually meant. And then we talked about the lower, middle, and the upper. Like the upper, like Paleolithic times can be divided into three different parts: lower, middle, and the upper timelines. And then we discussed about the eras. I mean, one was from 2 million years ago to 12,000 years ago, one was between 12,000 to 10,000 years, Mesolithic, and from 10,000 years to present day, Neolithic. Okay, so we discussed all of that, and then we came here to the changing climate thing, that around 12,000 years ago, climate moved from the wintry to a little bit more warmer condition, leading to increased grasslands, leading to more deer and antelope, more of the deer and antelope coming into picture, predators rate increasing, and also the activity of fishing increasing. And then we came down here to wheat, barley, and rice again. And then we found how people became farmers because they started settling down to take care of crops and taming animals so that they can also account for being what do you say, animal, like store of food or something. That's how they became the herders, and they herded goats, cattle, and animals like that. Then we talked about domestication, things that people would look for, like not being prone to, like the species not being prone to disease, having large size grains, and having strong stalks. And we can see the difference of domestication over selective breeding period during the period, like over the period of time. And then it began like 12,000 years ago. Domestication occurred like 12,000 years ago. Then we talked about wheat and barley again, like they were the first ones to be domesticated. And the fact that it was in Kirthar and Suleiman Hills 8,000 years ago, the very first chapter, 12,000, it kind of fits together in one particular area. And this thing again relates back to the Mehergarh site that we found as a Neolithic site. Okay, another like gift is also another reason why people would how people would use the grains, not just as seed, food, and store of food, but also as gifts. Okay, so we move further, and then we find that people started making large clay pots and baskets, and they used to make pits in which they would store their food. Mehergarh, again another. No. Dug pits. This was Burzo, some B word. What was that? Burza home. Burza home is where people stored food. Pit houses. Pit houses in Burza home. Okay. Store of food. Okay. Now what else? Blue squares, Neolithic sites in the northwestern region, eastern regions, and also in the southern regions. I'll take a quick look of the blue sites. These are southern regions, Payamparli, Halur, and eastern regions we have Mahagarh, Koldehwa, Chirand, and Daujali Hadding. And the northwestern side we have Burzahom and we have Mehergarh. Mehergarh is one of the most important ones. Burzahom is where we found the duck pits. Duck pits into the ground. Wait, one second. Dug pits into the ground, right? And then we talked about the remains of burnt grains, which could have been accidental or purposeful. Okay, Burzahom, dug pits, shelter, dug pits into the ground, and then we have that shelter in cold weather environment is what the pit house would have been in use of. Okay, and the tools in Neolithic era would be different because of the polished surface and the fine cutting edge that could come out of it. And the newer tools like mortars and pestles are just still in use to date, since that time, to grind stuff. And then we talked about the use of earthen pots, which could have been decorated or could be normally made and all, for storage of stuff or to cook stuff. That's what these pots could have been used for. Okay, and they began weaving cloth because cotton started happening. Yeah, and then men and women still continue to hunt and gather food and so and so, right? Okay, and this is the kind of houses that were discovered in Mehergarh. Square or rectangular houses is what they would call it. And animal bones were found in these regions. There was this site where they found a person um, buried with goats because they believed in afterlife. Okay, and then we talked about barley and wheat. We talked about Suleiman Kirthar hills and all. Okay. Oh, and there was this another thing, Bolan Pass, and that was like an important route which entered into Iran. So Bolan Pass is also important. And then what? Then what did we do in the next world? And then we talked about elsewhere. We talked about cave paintings in France, where the colors were made with the help of minerals such as ochre or iron ore, and because of charcoal, and that these were done usually during the ceremonial occasions. So that's about France. And then we talked about a Neolithic site in Turkey called Katal Hayuk or Katal Hayuk, however it's pronounced, I don't know. And we learned that several things were brought from great distances, such as flint from Syria, cowries from the Mediterranean, and shells of okay, I totally missed it. Cowries from the Red Sea and shells from the Mediterranean Sea. Okay, how do you memorize it? Cowries and Red Sea. So there's like Red Sea, and there are cowries. I hope you know what cowries are. These are like those glossy shell kind of things with okay, just search it on the images. I mean, you'd know what it is. I don't know if it's pronounced cowries. It should be, but anyway, take a look at it if you don't know. Anyway, so cowries on the Red Sea and shells from the Mediterranean Sea. Okay, and then but the fact that they used to have, like, they should be carried on the back of animals, or they would have been carried by people themselves. So that kind of concludes everything that we studied in this chapter. It's longer than the one that I did last time. God. even after trying to end this chapter as quickly as possible. So there is no way that a chapter would take lesser time. Maybe if I study before and then I upload things. But I need your opinion first. I mean, I think this is better because it's a study with me session. So, yeah, truth be told, I mean, I did one reading of this chapter before starting the recording and all. Um, but I think, I think this is a better way of doing it. Yeah. Yeah, so I think I'm going to end this here. Maybe next time we'll try to reduce the size further a little bit, probably. But more or less, I guess it will be somewhere of this much of a time, an hour or so, here and there at best. Okay, cool. I'm going to end this here.